name is Dave Clark. I'm co-founder of this group that's sponsoring the event today, Residents for Better Bloomington. Kathy Kranz is my co-founder over there as well. We have other people that have been very involved in our group over the years here, and we're a citizen watchdog group. We started in 2021 after a number of people had a number of concerns, and we all came together realizing we could never make any changes by ourselves, but we can make changes for the better if we come together. So that's the whole purpose of Residents for Better Bloomington. We're a nonpartisan group. We're a independent expenditure group, and that's who we are. We've invited both DFL reps from Bloomington here, Coulter and Elkins. I don't see any of them here today, so they have decided not to attend here, citing the lack of a power sharing agreement with the Republicans. Take that for whatever you will. But we do have a couple of representatives here who have given graciously of their time. They are not our representatives, and yet they're still here, taking time away from their families and their constituents. So please give them a warm Bloomington welcome. So on the left here, we have Representative Pam Altendorf. She is from Redwing, and she's driven all the way up here to be with us today, so we really appreciate that. And we have Representative Robbins. She's up in the 37A, right, in the Maple Grove area?
Maple Grove, Western Heaven.
Okay, here we go. I got the names of everybody who's been invited here, okay? So we have Representative Myers. I think they won't be here because they had a personal commitment, but those are the folks there. If you want more information about RFABB or you want to get involved, because we got 7 local races here this year, and we need help, okay? We're not going to win them by wishing them into office. We need help, we need bodies. If you want to do anything with those elections, we are starting to get volunteers trained and people signed up for that. So just send us an email here. Here's an email address you can just take a picture of, info@rfabbmn.org. Or if you want more information about RFABB, want to know more about who we are and what we've done and kind of what we stand for, and you just want to learn more, you can do the same thing. But that's the best way to do that. Send us an email, we'll follow up with you and schedule a coffee or a phone call or something like that. So, and then also, like I told earlier, if you do want to write your questions down, you can write them down on cards, or at the end we will have a Q&A and I will bring you the microphone. Don't feel obligated to walk down these tricky steps here. I'll bring you the microphone so you don't have to do that. Okay? So we're going to start. We're going to do those 3 things I talked about. First thing is we're going to ask the representatives to just kind of go back and forth and tell us, how did we get here? How did we end up in this situation where there's literally an impasse at the State House, literally where all the DFLers are boycotting the session? How did that happen? Secondly is, where are we now? With the court decisions and the whole issue of the quorum and kind of what's happening with the Republican side being in session, but the DFLers are saying that we aren't, and where are we now and where are we going? And we'll have a Q&A at the end. So without any further ado, Representative Altendorf, please take it from here.
Yeah, thank you so much, David, and thank you all for coming out today. I know people have busy schedules, and this is important, what's happening here in Minnesota. We're really under a constitutional crisis, and I just think we need to really educate the public on what's happening. So just to give you the little laydown, we went from the last 2 years of it being the Democrat trifecta, where they had the governor, the Senate, and the House. And in the House, that was the only chamber that was on the ballot in November 2024. And so the Republicans, it was 70 Democrats, 64 Republicans, and of course, we were working hard to end that trifecta. And what happened is we ended up being in a tie. So election night, after the results came in, it was 67 to 67. Now, this is very historical. It doesn't happen very often. Anyone know the last time that happened in Minnesota? 79. So it's very, very rare to end up in a tie. But that's what happened. And so we woke up to this tie. What happened next, later, about a month later, was there was a trial in 40B, which is a Roseville seat. And the Democrat who ran in that seat did not actually live in the district that he ran for office. He lived in Cottage Grove, but he was running in Roseville. So they did have an apartment There was, I believe, close to 300 pages of documentation that was brought to that trial. And the judge ruled that Curtis Johnson, the Democrat, could not take that seat because it was definitively found that he did not live in that district. He did not connect the utilities, the apartment was never furnished, and so it was just without a doubt that candidate did not live in that district. So before this, we did go from having a 67 to 67 tie, which typically when that happens, you would do what's called power sharing. Because you are tied, that means you need to decide on everything from who are the committee leads to all the way down to our staff, to parking. Everything has to be decided through power sharing because it's equal representation of both bodies, the Republicans and Democrats. Now, after this trial and the judgment that the Democrat had cheated in that election, 67 minus 1 equals 66. And so that's where the real struggle has been happening is the Republicans are at a 67 lead, the Democrats are currently at 66. And then when we came to starting this new session, they did not want to come into become sworn in on the day that we did, January 14th, because I believe, this is my opinion, but that we were going to elect Lisa Dameth as our Speaker of the House. And so this was their way of preventing that from happening. So that's just a little bit of background. I'm sure we can get into a lot more of that. But then I want to introduce Representative Robbins. And we were really excited about having Lisa as the speaker because we also were going to create this new fraud committee. And this is where Representative Robbins comes in and she was going to chair that committee.
Thanks. Hi, good morning. Thanks for all being here. Thanks for caring about your community so much. This really matters. The work you're doing now, the work we're doing at the Capitol, and what we're going to do in the next 2 years to set us up for 2026 really matters. So thank you. So just to pick up the narrative where Representative Altendorf left off, when we gavelled in, so we were 67-66. And on January 14th, that's the first day of session. And the Democrats didn't want to provide quorum because in their mind, quorum is 68, because there's 134 seats in the House. But as Secretary Simon has stated publicly, there's only 133 election certificates that are valid right now. So they didn't want to make sure we got to that 68, so they secretly swore all their members in at the History Center, not the seat of government as the Constitution requires, at the History Center on Sunday, January 12th. It was not open to the public, it was not open to the media, it was not a public meeting of a body of the legislature, but yet they were sworn in there on a Sunday night. So when we got to Tuesday, January 14th, which is the lawful day to start session, their members were sworn in their minds, and we went to be sworn in, and Secretary Simon presided. We declared, as the 67 of us, that we were at quorum because 67 is a majority of the body when there's 133 election certificates. And so we declared ourselves a quorum in session, which we as elected members of the House of Representatives have the right to do. And we organized the House, elected Lisa as Speaker, organized committees, and for 2 weeks we ran that way. And we had Speaker Dameth, we had committees, hearing bills, having meetings, we introduced tons of bills. I can't even remember the number I introduced. So then fast forward to a week ago, last Friday, the Democrats sued to say we weren't a quorum. So the Supreme Court ruled a week ago yesterday that no, a quorum is not what is described in the Constitution as a majority of each body, but a quorum is in fact 68, half of the 134. So that is why this past Monday, everything got wiped out. The House website took down all our committee pages, they erased all our bills, it's all gone like it never even happened. And so for this last week, we have been meeting in our committees as working groups, continuing to work because here's the deal. We have a constitutional adjournment date of May 19th, and this is a budget year. And the people of Minnesota are counting on us to put together a budget that will keep state government functioning as of July 1 when the fiscal year starts. We need the state patrol, we need prisons, we need the judiciary, we need lots of things that state government does to happen, even though the Democrats have continued to boycott. So we thought, well, they won the court case, they won what they wanted. They sued us over the quorum issue. They won with an all-Democrat majority in the Supreme Court, I might add. And so we, like, maybe I'm just too naive. I thought they'd show up at work on Monday. No, they didn't come, and they stayed all week. So then it became, oh, it's not really about the quorum. Okay, to back up to Pam's point. They ran an illegal candidate in Roseville. Then the governor called an illegal special election that they thought would be January 28th, which the court did side with us and say, no, he called it wrong. So they called the special illegal. They swore in their members outside of the bounds of the law. And now the court agreed with them on quorum and said 68. So we thought, okay, they'd show up. They didn't. So they stayed out all week, and now they moved the goalpost again, and now the issue apparently is the Shakopee seat where Representative Brad Tabke was reelected, but by a 14-point margin. And in the recount, they discovered 21 ballots were missing. So they're saying now it's about seating Brad Tabke. So, but I don't think that's true. I think it's really about power. Because whenever there's any discussion of, oh, Brad Tabke, they say, oh, and the power sharing agreement. So they just don't want to acknowledge the reality that we have 67 and they have 66 and allow us to organize the House under that framework when it's all own goals on their side that they ran candidates who were illegal and called a special election that was illegal. So all that to say, so where we are today is we have now, as of Thursday, sued Secretary of State Simon because every day he comes in the House and still is the presiding officer and doesn't recognize our members from the floor to offer motions because the Constitution allows a motion for a minority of a quorum to compel members' attendance. And every day our majority leader, Harry Niska, stands up to be recognized by the Secretary to provide a motion to compel and to have penalties for their non-attendance because they have a constitutional duty to be there. And Secretary Simon just adjourns us. It doesn't recognize an elected member of the House of Representatives, a separate body of government. So on that point of separation of powers and that he is overstepping his authority as a ceremonial presiding officer, we sued Thursday. So that case is going to be argued in the Minnesota Supreme Court this coming Thursday. So my guess Monday morning is they'll still stay out again for another week. And Pam and I will be there every day doing the committee work, trying to get the budget together, working on things. So in that vein, I also run the fraud committee and I am working every day. Literally last night, a Friday night, I was in my office till 6:45 triaging all the fraud whistleblower complaints that are coming into me. Like, I honestly can't keep up, it's insane. But Minnesotans are tired of their taxpayer dollars being wasted and I'm not getting the services where the money is supposed to be spent. And they are coming out of the woodwork to tell me what's going on out there. And literally, I'm just trying to keep up. I'm gonna go work on it again when I get home this afternoon. There's more complaints about fraud than I can possibly investigate with our little team. But we're trying to triage, we're trying to get help to send some stuff to other committees where they have jurisdiction. And this is an issue that's ongoing and we will be taking a very hard look at so we can improve management of state government, so we can ensure taxpayer dollars are not wasted, so we can ensure Minnesotans get the services they're qualified for, if they're qualified for them, and we can get rid of some corruption in state government. So that's what we're working on. The work does not stop just because we're, in some people's eyes, not organized, because we are working every day. So anyway.
Yeah. this should not be a partisan issue. You know, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, we cannot be bringing in hard-earned taxpayer dollars and then they're going out the back door. Under the Governor Wallace administration, and if you go to American Experiment, they've been really good about tracking this fraud. So it's American Experiment, just Google that. And they have over $500 million of provable fraud in the state of Minnesota. Many people estimate it's closer to $1 billion. And I'm very active on Twitter and Facebook. I'm in a district that's more red. We're probably 60% Republican. And I just came into this 2 years ago. This is my second term. But being in the triple minority, I knew at the end of the day this is a math problem, right? If you're a Republican, like I am, that at the end of the day the Democrats are going to pass their agenda because they have more votes than us. But what I wanted to do, and I've tried to do, is really be a voice for all the conservatives in Minnesota that we haven't done a great job of conveying our message. And that's one thing that I've been trying to do, but getting back to, when I'm posting about all of this fraud, I literally started hashtagging them Minnesota Mafia. And it's really not a joke, I actually mean that. Because you cannot have this much fraud in one state without it being some sort of almost organized crime. This truly is not an accident. And when we go back to COVID, there was $250 million. Minnesota had the biggest COVID fraud scandal in the whole country. That should not be something we were proud of. And when Governor Wallace was made aware of this, nothing happened. And to my knowledge, I don't know, maybe you can talk more on this, but I don't know if anyone in the Wallace administration has ever been fired or held to account for all of the fraud that has happened in the state. And so again, when I do that, you know, I kind of am trying to educate the public, maybe through a little bit of humor, maybe being a little bit edgy. But truly, as citizens of Minnesota, we have to say enough is enough. We have to draw the line, and it shouldn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. We cannot continue to manage our state at this level, and it's just so terrible to the Minnesota taxpayers. The people who are struggling, our schools are struggling, nursing homes are struggling, hospitals are struggling, EMTs. And then to see these millions and millions of dollars being wasted, it's very tragic. It's very tragic.
Let's mix it up a little bit. Let's take a little break and then have you regroup and maybe talk about some more things. Let's take any questions that are coming to mind here. What's popping up here in your minds as far as questions are concerned? Al.
Al Muirhoff, Bloomington. I'm a little confused on the 67, 66 because if Brad Tabke said, I'm not challenging the ruling on the court for the guy that's his opponent, why isn't he in there in his 67, 67?
Oh, there's 67 Republicans. There's 66 Democrats. When we say 66, that's counting Tabke in that number.
It's the Roseville seat.
It's the Roseville seat that made them go down. And so 67 Republicans, 66 Democrats, and the Republicans can't go down. There's the two possible seats that we're talking about, Tabke or 40B, either one of them, the Republicans would only go up. Like if the Republicans won the 40B Roseville race, we would go up. And so, but in that number, and that's what's very deceptive in the marketing or in the messaging in the media, is they're saying we're not seeing Tabke. 67 Republicans, 66 does count Tabke in that number.
Quick question about the fraud. Is there a way to get citizens involved in investigating and following up? I know there's a lot of leads, and I'm thinking, you know, we probably have retired detectives, attorneys. I know myself, a lot of what I did in my career was investigative type work. And I'm thinking of when the big, huge document dump by Pfizer was done. It was supposed to be out there for 75 years. All of a sudden, they had millions upon millions of pages. And they just kind of turned the citizenry loose and said, start reading and start sending us thoughts and whatnot. Is there a way to do that with this fraud or not?
At the moment, no, but I appreciate the offer. And we may find a structure like that. The problem is whistleblower protection, right? And it's private information that's being shared with us, and some of it is data privacy about individual health cases or things like that. And so we are bound by certain data privacy laws, and that's why we cannot, we have to be very respectful of that process. And part of the reason people come forward is because they know we are protecting their identity. So that's at the root. Yeah, so one of the things we're doing is we're trying to create a whistleblower website where people can email us, and then it helps me stay more organized when they could fill out a form that's secure and then send me the particulars of an issue. And I had a meeting about it yesterday morning. I would say maybe a week from now that might be up. So people are actively working on creating this whistleblower portal for us, but it's not alive yet.
And just one more note on that, so to your point, I am not on the fraud committee, and I have had citizens email me and contact me with potential fraud that they believe. And I want to point this out, but a lot of the fraud is happening through nonprofits. And that's happening at the federal level and the state level. And so what's happened is this NGO nonprofit organization is set up, and then we, the people, are funding these nonprofits for the most part. And then at that point, there's no oversight because they're not technically under the government. And the money could be, I've seen so many different things, like where the CEO of the nonprofit is just getting an absurd amount of money themselves. But also you can follow that and all of this is public, so people can start digging into this. So when you start finding these nonprofits, you can also find out who are they donating to, whose campaigns are they donating to. And so there are people in the public that are digging into this as well.
Hi, Terry Gomanek with ST50, and I have a question about the election. And it's my understanding, and perhaps you can make it clear to us, that they can't call for the special election in 40B until the House is organized.
No, that's not exactly how it's worded in the statute. So what happens is, after the first day of the legislature convening, a clock starts ticking for 22 days. And after 22 days, the governor can call a special election. And so we expect, because the legislature on statute convened on January 14th and the Senate is in fact operating fully, the 22-day clock started on January 14th. And my understanding, because they don't count Sundays and they don't, count, I think, federal holidays or something, my understanding is he will call it on February 5th. And then that would trigger the election, my understanding is, on March 11th. And then the earliest that the Roseville, whoever's elected in that seat can be seated is, my understanding again, and it could be off a day or two, is March 17th.
So they're gonna hold out.
So our expectation is that they're holding out, like that's literally the middle of session. So they are getting paid, not doing their job, halting the work of a legitimate branch of government over not wanting to come in because they happen to be in the minority for 6 weeks. Like, it's so absurd. And I want you to think about the broader sense. So like, we're in the legislature right now, this matters to us and all of our constituents. But when we looked back at the 79 agreement, we looked at what happened then and the precedents that set for us. And now the precedents we are setting going forward, the thing that concerns me most is about the institution of the legislature. Because currently, the Supreme Court, a separate branch of government, has told us what our quorum is. And currently, the Secretary of State from the executive branch of government comes in and tells us every day that we're not in session and when we adjourn to, and not recognizing an elected member of the legislature when they want to make a motion. So the erosion of the power of the co-equal branch of government, the Minnesota House of Representatives and the legislature, by the courts and the executive branch, is like the long-term concern for the institutional functioning of free, independent branches of government. So yes, I want to get this resolved and we need to get back to work and this session really matters, but we also have to think about the precedent going forward of the independence of the legislature. And so I just think that frame of reference is really important for people to understand.
Question.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate now the sequence of events for the special election. You mentioned that the clock ticks for 22 days, and the governor then, must he call an election, or does he have an option to call an election on March 11th? Is that a must or a
I'd have to look at it again, but I think it's a must.
It's a
And
must.
so he will call it, I believe it will be February 5th that the writ is issued.
But he would call it no earlier than March 11th?
That's what we believe right now. But also, the law says that the first day of session, that you shall come to the House chamber at noon and be sworn in, by the Secretary of State.
Yes.
And that was shall in the Minnesota statute, and the Democrats didn't do that either. So a little bit they're making up their own rules as we go here. You can say that. Just,
Okay, excuse me, to finish up my question then.
Yeah.
So if that election takes place on March 11th and the GOP the candidate wins, then we're at 68-66, is that?
correct, yes. If the 40B, the Roseville race, the Republican wins, we would be at 68 to 66.
We would have a majority.
We'd have the majority, so let's.
Then we would have the majority.
In Roosevelt.
That's right.
If the DFL candidate wins, we're back to 67, and that power sharing that you were talking about then
Yeah.
takes place.
Well, and I just kind of going off of what Representative Robbins said, the precedent this is setting and why the Supreme Court got this totally wrong is if we're going to play this game, this is a political game that's happening right now. And if we're going to play this game, if the Democrats won in 40B, we would be back to a 67 tie. And basically at that point, the Republicans could say, okay, see ya. And we would not come into session. Now, I'm not saying we would do that, but that's the precedent that they literally just said. And we no longer have an operational government. That's a very dangerous place to be.
Sorry, I just want to bring back to fraud. I had heard that President Walz's administration had changed the way grants. Governor Walz had changed the way grants are awarded. It used to be more of a legislative thing, and now they've kind of skipped through that, and it's just kind of the grants are being given to all these NGOs without the body deciding where they go. And maybe you could speak to that. I don't know if that was accurate.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate. So in the 2023 session, the Democrats did put forth some grants management reform in a study group. So they say they've accomplished things and that they're trying. That really hasn't borne any fruit. And I've had a statewide grants management reform bill for 4 years that I worked on with the Office of the Legislative Auditor and drafting it, and it's never had a hearing. Because when Democrats were in charge, they did not care. And now that all these list after list after list of fraud keeps coming to light, they are caring more, and the governor did put out his own anti-fraud measures a couple weeks ago. But it's like the fox guarding the hen house. Everything stays in the executive branch. We are the legislature. We should be exercising authority over these grants. We're the ones who appropriate them, which is why having a House fraud investigative committee is so important. So I hope when our colleagues on the other side come back that it is bipartisan, because to me it's a separation of powers issue. It's not really a partisan issue. And so I hope that they come to join the fraud committee and work with us on this, because it will be much more effective if it's bipartisan. And they also, I do believe, care about not wasting taxpayer money and about not making sure people get the services. But, so they've had some window dressing attempts at grants management reform, but, and honestly, part of the problem has been the Democrat-controlled legislature. So I've been in 6 years, this is my 7th year. Every year until this year, I've been in the minority. And what kind of the pattern we see is they create these pots of money, different grant programs, and then they're run by the agencies, and the agencies have a lot of power to make the decisions about who gets the grants, and so it tends to be to their favored groups. And so I'm very careful with my words, so I'm not gonna say it's necessarily criminal or kickbacks or whatever, but certainly there have been investigations. This week we saw, if you saw the Kara Levin channel story on the actual kickbacks in the New Way addiction treatment program, I mean, they've got the receipts. So in some instances, it is that brazen. In some instances, it's not as clear, and that's why we're doing the investigative work. But what we need is a stronger overarching grants management system, so that if somebody's getting a grant in Minnesota Department of Ed and it turns into Feeding Our Future, that's flagged. So if they're on the back end trying to get a grant from DHS, they know, oh, there was a problem here, you can't give them a grant. And it's flagged across the system. Right now, every agency has their own little system and they don't talk to each other.
Well, and real quick on that too, but we saw that in the Feeding Our Future COVID scandal, that then some of the same people that were in that were also in the autism center fraud that came out later. So we need to have an oversight committee that is watching all of this.
Were the Democrats even legitimately sworn in? It happened at the wrong time, the wrong location, in secret by a retired judge. Is the Supreme Court being asked to rule on that?
I'll just, so there are so many different lawsuit possibilities right now, and you're absolutely correct. And that is one of the angles is, and I am with you. I do not believe that the Minnesota House Democrats were lawfully, legally sworn in. It is very clear, and the wording is not may. It doesn't say you may show up or you may go to a back alley and get sworn in. It says, it's very specific. It says, shall come to the chamber, so they weren't in the chamber, at noon on the first day of session and sworn in by the Secretary of State. So what I have been told though is, you have to understand, and I know people are frustrated with what's going on, and so are we, but we are always trying to take the best and the angle to achieve the goals that we need to get into business, to get back to work. So is that another lawsuit? Potentially, absolutely. But has it started? No, not at this point, because we've been putting out other fires.
And just to understand, there is some precedent where members have been sworn in a hospital, in I think maybe a military base, in other circumstances. So when you ask a Democrat that question, that's what they rely on. That there is precedent allowing swearing in other locations by other than the Secretary of State. And so that's what they're relying on. And so when we're looking strategically at where do we start different points of this and how do we preserve our independence from the courts, knowing the courts are fully Democrat, right? Because we don't want to create a precedent where we have a lot of decisions that then are imposed on us as a body when we're a separate branch of government. So I'm not saying it won't happen at some point, but because there is existing precedent where members have been sworn in other circumstances, that's what the Democrats are relying on to do this en masse, which has never been done.
The facility over in East Bloomington that's doing this fraud, remember they're the #1 ISIS recruiting center in the country, by the way, too. That's just one point. But the NGOs here, that are, sounds like they're getting tax money from us, and they're contributing to political campaigns. To me, that's as fraud as it gets. They should lose their tax exempt status. They shouldn't get a penny from us.
I appreciate that, but there's a little bit of more nuance to it. The organization gets tax money. The contributions come from individuals who work at those organizations, so it's not the tax money that went to the organization that's being contributed to politics. It's that individual who works there who's making a political donation, and that's a First Amendment protected right.
Hi, Dan Anxious here. I have a question. I read an article recently at probably beginning of the week when tons of lawsuits, who knows how to keep track of them, that Republicans are trying to force a monetary fine for Democrats not showing up to work. I love that idea, but also I feel like most of us are just sick and tired of political games in general. Is there any way to make amendments, to do bills? I know this would take time, but to end this to where you don't show up, not only do you not get paid, maybe you lose your seat. Like if you're not representing your constituents, why are you working? Why are you still there? Is there any way going forward that something like that could take place?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I know, again, there's so much frustration what's going on right now. To your point, people have also said that in the 40B race, when he was found to have cheated, that there should be some sort of fine or some sort of consequence that person had to suffer, which then would hopefully eliminate that happening in the future. So what you're saying too about absolutely, like, if you're not showing up at work, I think most people would agree if you don't show up at work, you don't get paid, and that should be something. I want to tell you this, and it's not to depress you if you're a conservative or a Republican or even just a common sense Democrat. But right now in the state of Minnesota for the last 20 years, we are very much controlled by this Democrat Party, and they have. So when something happens to us, our avenues to fix that would be through, the governor is Walz, the attorney general is Ellison, the secretary of state is Steve Simon, and then they control the judicial branch. And so again, I don't say this to depress you, but I want you to picture this, is we are a little bit trapped in their organization. And so right now, the best that we can do is expose this to the public and to just, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to work really, really hard to expose this, because when the public is aware, I believe they will say enough is enough, and it will be enough for us to finally turn the state around. And I don't know if you've more to add to that.
So to your point, in the lawsuit on Thursday that we issued, the motion that Majority Leader Niska has been trying to make and not getting recognized for is to fine the members who are not showing up for the amount of their salary, in effect saying they wouldn't get paid. So if he were recognized, that's the motion we would bring. And I'm sure my colleagues are also working on statutory changes as bills that would put it in statute that if you don't show up and do your constitutional duty, you forfeit your salary for the period you are not coming. Accepting illness or whatever, right? But will we be able to pass that bill in a tie if we're 67-67 again? It's unlikely, right? Potentially a Democrat will vote with us, but in a tie, things fail. So we're not gonna get much done this session, just to level set, right? We need a budget, but nothing else probably will get done.
No.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
John Barnett, are you getting the legal counsel that you need, and are you satisfied with it?
I believe so. We have an attorney who's done these kind of election-related cases for many years in lots of Minnesota election contests. And then Majority Leader Niska is an attorney, and they've also hired some additional attorneys. So I haven't heard that people are concerned about the counsel we're receiving. So my guess is they're happy with it.
I would say we're just very, very blessed with the situation of having Harry Niska as an attorney, where he is in this position right now as majority leader. That has really been a benefit to our caucus, and I know he has the ability to talk to other attorneys outside. The one thing, and this is just a fact, is what I have found is, and I don't know percentage, but a lot of the attorneys in Minnesota lean Democrat or lean liberal. And so what I was told is, especially in these election contests, the pool of attorneys that we have to hire is actually much smaller than what maybe would happen if you were a Democrat. So again, I think that leads to the Democrat Party in the past, you kind of see them be this machine, and I believe if some of these things happened and it was reversed, we would probably be getting sued in 5 different ways. And I just believe, this is me, but I just don't believe we have the depth of attorneys that the Democrat Party holds.
My name is Tom Leeson. My question is about the special election. So when the governor had the illegal writ for the election, independent parties had 36 hours to pound the pavement to get 500 signatures to be able to get on the ballot, which is completely bans any independent party from participating in that special election. Will there be any additional time when they redo that? Will there be a fair amount of time, like 2 weeks? It's crappy that they only have 2 weeks in a normal election, but will they have at least 2 weeks to get signatures to get on the ballot?
My understanding is they will, because the writ, if what I've been told for the timeline holds, the writ comes out February 5th, and the election is until February 11th, so that would put the primary, or March 11th, that would put the primary in that first 2 weeks, so of February, whatever 2 weeks from February 5th is. So my understanding is they'll have the full 2 weeks, right? And that's one of the reasons I think it was shut down, because the timelines were so short. On the special in the D6 seat, which no one sued about, they had literally 24 hours before the filing period closed. It was absurd.
Regarding the fact that the 3 branches of government are not working right, is there any precedent of any other state situation where it's come to a standstill like this and something has happened outside of our state that, could go to Supreme Court or something?
My understanding is there have been other states that have been in this situation, but it's never elevated to federal because of, there's states' rights, and the federal government has no jurisdiction in our legislative or our courts or our executive branch. So I think in the long run, that's probably right and good. So we will work it out, but it's going to be problematic. Other states have been through this. They've had power sharing agreements. They've had Supreme Court rulings. They've had, in Texas, they sent their state patrol out to find missing members. It can get beyond where we are as it has in other states. But the reason we're suing the lawsuit we did Thursday is based on an Indiana precedent, where in Indiana they had a situation where they were successful in finding their members who did not come to work.
This isn't maybe a question for you, but we've heard the Democrats are out meeting all their constituents, and that's why they're not at the Capitol. Where are they today?
Well, I think that's a great question, and actually, so the question is, where are the Democrats? They're not at the Capitol. Yesterday, so typically we are in St. Paul Monday through Thursday, where we have committee meetings. Sometimes you're in office on Friday as well. I usually do in-district things on Friday. And yesterday I went to, it was a Southeast Minnesota superintendent meeting where over 40 public schools, administrators, the school board members are invited. This is a big deal. It happens once a year. And I've participated, and usually the Democrats are there and usually the Republicans are there because we care about our public schools, we care about education. I went there yesterday. There was not one Democrat there. And I think that's part of the thing that we need to address as Minnesotans, the elephant in the room, is education right now, just to give you one example, but there's many examples, but education is really suffering right now. We're in a crisis. Our children are not reading, and it's a crisis. And to be sitting in that room and to have 6 Republicans there in a messy, this is a messy situation, but we're there to work for Minnesota, and to not see one Democrat show up, I hope the Minnesotans are paying attention of who's showing up right now.
Hi, I read that in Minnesota, the state patrol cannot be used to force the legislature to come to session.
Yes, Governor Walz has stated that, and he does have jurisdiction over the state patrol as like an agency, so he's in charge of the Department of Public Safety, which is where they're out of. So in other states, the governor has compelled the state patrol. I don't know in this instance if our governor would. The Sergeant of Arms has jurisdiction at the Capitol, which is why they're staying away from the building, because if we get the right to compel them and they're on the Capitol grounds, the Sergeant at Arms office would have jurisdiction at the Capitol.
Question here. So far, I understand that the legal actions that have been taken have largely been by the attorneys that have been hired by the House, by the House caucus. Is there a value in any action taken outside of the House, say by the Republican Party? There's been talk, for example, of petitions. Do you see any value in that, and is that something that's in the overall plan?
I don't know about a plan, but amicus briefs are always welcome, and I'm assuming the party has done that. In the earlier lawsuit, it was the party that sued, not the House Republican caucus. So in that instance where they sued the governor for issuing the writ incorrectly, I believe that suit was brought by the Republican Party, and the lawyers for the party were from a group called the Upper Midwest Law Center. And so certainly other groups are involved in this, and even though we're the main suit that was filed on Friday, amicus briefs are always welcome, and I think if I read the court wrote an order yesterday saying when everything is due, I think those are due on Tuesday.
And just to that point too, and again, I know this is frustrating, it's frustrating to watch, and daily, we might have people saying, do something. And I just want to let you know what we did all week, showing up in the chamber, Harry Niska not being acknowledged as the majority leader, and Secretary of State refusing to acknowledge him. So as frustrated as everyone was at home watching, that just built our case. And so again, we don't like where we're at, it's messy, but just believe that we are working on the back end, and we're trying to do the very best that we can, and we're working all angles.
Good morning, and I want to thank you again, and on behalf of everybody here, for coming here in the morning. Not only the work you're doing during the week, but here on the Saturday morning. A lot of the information you so succinctly brought to our attention, I have gotten, and I think several people have gotten a lot of this information fairly dependably at alphanews.org. I'm wondering if you would agree, or maybe have another source where each of us can go if we want to kind of keep up on this, other than alphanews.org, which I think is a good source.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Alpha News is a news organization. If you're not following them, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, and you can find them online. And please follow them. They truly are a great resource. And I tell people to, also watch CNN, watch all the other news stations as well. And, you need to use your discernment right now. It's a confusing time. American Experiment, I brought them up as well. So please follow American Experiment, Alpha News, and you're going to get that insider information that sometimes is just being left out of the mainstream media. Is there anything else?
I would say follow Pam's social media accounts, mine. The House Republican Caucus has a Twitter and Facebook page. The Fraud Committee just came out with one. It's MN Fraud, I think we're calling it, but any updates on the fraud situation will come on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. And then, you know, whoever your rep is, we all put out a newsletter every week. And if you go on their page, so you Google, you know, whoever your state representative is, and then it shows all the Minnesota House members, and you click on the link for their page, you can sign up for their email newsletter. And even if your members are in the other party and you disagree with them, you'll get the info of how they're portraying this. And then you can follow Pam and I's newsletter and get the other side. So that's how you can hold your legislators accountable, is by following what they're saying and then saying, hey, but this is not accurate, or this is what I heard.
We really are in an information war right now. That's how I look at it. And the biggest difference, what I see from 2020 to 2024, is that in 2020, complete censorship was happening. If you had just a little bit of a different opinion on something, whether it was about COVID or whether it was about Trump or Hunter Biden's laptop, and that was hidden, if you were giving an opposing view to the one party, you were shut down. Accounts were taken down from YouTube, Twitter accounts were closed, Facebook accounts were censored, and that's a fact. So how are we here today in 2024? It is really that we have this new freedom, I believe, of our First Amendment right to free speech again. And so the information is getting out there. And so I, just like Representative Robbins said, please follow. And it's exciting for me to see the truth getting out. And I always say, like, you know, we're very divided, but I think it's a lot because we believe two different sets of truths. And no one really likes to be here. You know, no one really likes this tension and division. And so just seek the truth, look at both sides, and I just am very optimistic when we get to that point that we will get to a better point. It's just, again, a little messy right now.
It's encouraging for me to hear that the truth is getting out. Our biggest frustration here in Bloomington for a lot of us is getting the truth out. Our representative, Nathan Coulter, isn't here. Lives just blocks away. You mentioned Minnesota Mafia. I think of Media Mafia. The Sun Current, our hometown paper, Mike Hanks, the editor, he left a little while ago, rather than staying to report on the news that's happening. Our city manager is now CEO of Catholic Charities. We have a lot of corruption here, and our biggest concern is getting the word out. I appreciate that more truth is going to be available. Are there other things that can be done? Mainstream media, when I hear the stories, I'll watch something live, I'll hear it reported. It could have been a whole different thing. And that's where I get really frustrated. I think a lot of us here, Bloomington is huge, and this is a small number of people. It could be, yeah, embarrassing is what she said, but also, I think people just don't know. They don't know that people aren't even showing up.
Yeah, no, 100%. And here's the layout is, you know, there's 10% of people that are very, very far left and they're not going to move, and there's probably 10% very, very far right that are not going to move. I believe wholeheartedly, you know, 70 to 80% of us, we're actually really all the same and would agree on the same things if we had the same sets of truths. So I do want to encourage you, because the truth is getting out, and the more people see that, I believe it gives more people courage to do the same. And so there are a lot of ways to break through the, you know, we were, again, controlled very much by the media narrative. And now because of independent journalism, if you look at nationwide surveys, the mainstream news is going down, the people that are watching, the viewership is going down, down, down. People are turning to podcasters. People are turning to independent journalists. And the reason why, this isn't really hard to understand, but if you are a network news station, perhaps during COVID, you know, you're maybe bringing in millions and millions of dollars by the pharmaceutical companies. Their hands were tied from reporting the truth. And so now we are breaking through, because when you have independent journalists, you can have someone speaking the truth, but they don't have that money backing them up that they necessarily cannot say the truth.
I'll add one more thing then, because one of the things that I've heard from people here in Bloomington is some don't even show up to vote because they don't think it's going to make a difference here in Bloomington or here in the state. And what I hear from you and what I hope other people pay attention to is what we do can make a difference. Everybody can do some little thing to turn things around. And yeah, thank you for being here.
That's absolutely true, and we need everyone to do that one little thing. So if you're just talking to your neighbor, or if you on your own social media accounts, like where the mainstream media locally has been doing a good job is on the fraud. So this past week, KSTP had a story on 62 child care assistance program investigations. Carol Levin did a story on the New Way Addiction Treatment Center fraud. And so you can just find those stories and forward them on your pages and say, look, more fraud in state government, or you can find something that the House Republican Caucus is putting out. Every day we put out a graphic that says 16 days and Democrats haven't shown up for work, 17 days. So you can follow that and you can repost that. And that's getting a broader audience. So maybe people don't even know their members and showing up for work. So you're engaging in helping get that message out by being here, by having this group, by then just posting on your individual pages or in your book club or talking about it at your church. I know, there's so many avenues where you're just in relationship with people. And you can say, do you know our person hasn't gone to the legislature in 17, 18, it's gonna be 20, I guess, soon. Like, people are flabbergasted. And then when you add, and they're still getting their salaries, then people are really mad. So I was at a party for a mayor of mine who's retiring, and I have, people who vote for me who are Democrats, people who vote for me who are Republicans. My district is very purple. And so this guy who I know is a Democrat, and he always kind of joshes me, and he's like, I cannot believe they're getting paid. What are you doing? And I'm like, well, we're trying to pull back their salary. And he's like, I show up for work every day. I have to get paid. So like the normal Minnesotan who's not political, who just is working hard, doing their life, they are outraged with us. And so being able to, it's not partisan, it's like, this is wrong. People should not get paid if they're not coming to work and if they're driving the legislature to a halt. So having those conversations while people are with us is really important.
As one of the youngest people I think here, I think it's very important to, well, it's true, a lot of us, live around here, have lived our whole lives here, and I think it's time to stop being afraid of what your neighbors think of you, what your coworkers think of you, well, maybe not at work, but it is so important to stop thinking what your grandma thinks of you on Facebook because what you truly believe in. It is up to us to start spreading this information, younger folks, and stop being so afraid of being isolated, alienated. This is disgusting, it's sick. I've worked and lived here, went to school here my whole life, and it makes me so sad to not see any young families here. Where is everyone? They're so afraid of making people mad, and the Democrats are so good at getting everyone involved, getting people together, knocking on doors, and where is that within our community? You don't see that. You just don't, and I want to see that within Bloomington, supporting, people that support us, so.
Well, first, thank you for being here. We need young people. You are the future of the party and the state, so thank you for being here. And to that point, there's a local Bloomington Republican group, they call it the BPOU, I don't know what district this is, but if you look up, what is it?
51B.
So this is 51B, so if you look up SD 51B on the Republican Party website, you'll find out, and we need young people to get involved. I'm trying to recruit young people on our executive board in my district. I'm trying to get young people to show up at meetings and help us, because we need you guys to help us with not only door knocking and yard signs and everything, but just building the brand among your generation. And then the other thing is the Republican Party has a young leaders group. And again, if you go on MNGOP, there's a young leaders group that meets, and they do fun things, they have happy hours, they go rafting, it's like a social group for young conservatives. And that will help you network among young conservatives. And it makes it fun, it makes people want to show up. They play pickleball, they do cool things, right? So get involved with them. And then the group Pam was talking about, Center of the American Experiment. If you go on their website, Center of the American Experiment, A, they have a fantastic fraud tracker, but B, they also have a young people's group. And they had like a fun Christmas party, and they do a lot of social events, again, building the brand to create a cohort of young conservatives. So there's some great opportunities that maybe you're not aware of, but it's really a great way for us to build the bench and for young people to see Republicans are not just like old and boring and, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm a senior citizen, right? Like, so I hope that you get involved in some of those younger generation things.
Hi, I'm Dale Johnson. I was the elected candidate for 51B, sorry. I was the Republican endorsed candidate for 51B. That's the east half of Bloomington. I did show up at the Capitol on the 14th. I was there. Now, my question was pay. So the paychecks are going out, and what's the pay schedule? Every week, every 2 weeks, what is that?
It's once a month.
Once a month, okay. And it sounds like, to capsulize, everything is going on in the last 20 years, possibly more, is being controlled by one fraction, one division of this party, of this state. And if people want to see something change, guess what? You gotta vote different.
Okay, we're gonna take a couple more questions and we gotta start wrapping up here. So we'll take a couple more, we'll start here with you, and then if anybody else has one or two more, we'll wrap up with that.
I just want to set the record straight. Mike Hanks was called out by name. Mike is a Bloomington resident. He and I chatted here. He was here in a personal capacity. We talked about whether there would be coverage. He had a family obligation at 11 o'clock in the North Metro. That is why he left. It wasn't because he isn't interested in the topic or doesn't plan to try to do something. I also know that the Sun-Current this last week had a lengthy article about the legislative situation, as well as a couple letters to the editor, which are chosen among everything that is submitted. So I believe that there is an attempt to at least get the information out. And again, I don't think it was fair to call out Mike Haynes for getting up and leaving to go to a personal obligation.
Thank you for clarifying.
So I'll just say that as well. Mike did say that he was coming here, he'd have to leave at 10:30 because of a personal commitment. You should also know that I invited Brianna Bierschbach, I think her name is, from the Star Tribune, to be here. So again, nonpartisan. We want to hear all voices. We want to engage with everybody. I myself have sat down for coffee with Mike, Curtis Griesel, Juana D'Alessandro, one of our council members here. Let's not be afraid to reach out to the other side and engage with them. We're not going to agree on everything, but let's at least engage with them and have a conversation. At the end of the day, like the representative said, you're always going to have the 10% on one side that are radical, 10% on the other side that are just never going to change their minds. But most people in the middle, and they're reasonable. And let me tell you another thing. If it was the Republicans that were boycotting the legislature, we'd be on their back just as much as we are the DFL. So nobody can say, oh, you're just picking on the DFL because they're on the other side. That is not true. I'd be the first one to go to the Republicans and say, get your butts back to work. In fact, we'd probably be harder on the Republicans than we are on the DFLers. So anyway, we just want to maintain fairness. A couple more questions. I know you have not spoken yet, so I'll get you the mic next. And then we'll give a chance for the representatives to wrap up. If they can, maybe they can linger a little bit afterwards and answer some questions. Apologize for going over time a little bit, but this has been fantastic. I hope you can all agree with that. Natalie, you have a question first, and I'll give it to you.
I just want to say thank you for clarifying why Mike left.
Sure.
I'm the one that called him out. We have a little history, Mike and I, so I appreciate knowing that he.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. No problem. Here's the mic.
Sue Holman, Sudich, and I heard talk about a recall effort for nonfeasance. Is there any merit to that?
Yeah, so let me just address that really quick. So the Minnesota GOP did announce that they would start the recall efforts. It's my understanding that, and I thought someone today that I talked to said an email came out that they are starting recalls. I haven't seen it myself, but if it's not today, maybe it's by Monday. I know personally in my office, I get asked almost daily what people can do to help around the state. And, one, in particular, one lady, she's a Democrat. And she has told me, she almost daily tells me that she wants to recall her Democrat legislator in the House. And so I'm like, listen, I'll get it to you as soon as I have it. I know the people want to do something to help, and those recall efforts would be, again, the best thing, for me, I do try to I have some cards over here, but if you follow on X or Twitter or Facebook, I'm trying to get the information out to the public, and the best thing that people can do is to share that. Or on the Minnesota GOP page, I'm sure they would put it out too. So just really be looking in those spots for that information.
Great, so I'm just gonna make a couple comments here, and then you can make some final comments and end with that. So, we're talking about the legislature, but I just want to remind each one of us here, that we have 7 local races here in Bloomington. It was the great Daniel Patrick Moynihan that famously said, all politics is local. Well, it's local here in Bloomington. We got 3 city council races, and we've got 4 school board. But we need to be organized, and we need to be getting together. So I need every single one of you to email us here, info@rfabb.org. We are starting to have meetings to talk about what does it mean to organize our city to deliver every single one of those votes, okay? Because if we can flip the city council and we can flip the school board, then all of a sudden we've got some representation. Because right there's no balance in either of those bodies, and we're seeing the results, so we really need your help. I also want to take an opportunity to recognize John Meeks, who is a declared candidate. He's a candidate for city council, right? So John Meeks ran last time in a ranked choice voting race. He's going to run again, but he needs to get 51% in the first round. And he can do that. This is going to be a low turnout election, right? We can absolutely give John Meeks a seat at the city council and give us a voice. He's currently on the Parks Board, right? Parks Commission. He wants to be our council member. I know what it's like to step up and try to win a race or two. It doesn't happen by itself. It needs money, it needs time, it needs organization. So I invite you to reach out to John, to reach out to RFABB to see how we can get folks like John. But that leaves 6 other races, guys. 6 other races. Maybe there's some candidates in this room that need to run. Maybe it's your chance to be, to run on the city council. Maybe it's your chance to run for school board. Or maybe you know somebody that just with a gentle word of encouragement, they would be willing to run. Because oftentimes that's how people decide to run, is by somebody coming to them and say, hey, you make a really good school board member. Do you know that? No, I could never do that. Yeah, no, you really, you're qualified, you've been an educator in the past, or maybe you're a business person or whatever. But sometimes it's just that gentle word of encouragement that triggers that person to say, you know what, maybe I should run. Maybe I should throw my hat in the ring. So I encourage you to do that. Because guys, it's just us. It's just us here in Bloomington. There's no, magic wand that we can wave and people are going to automatically get elected to office. It's people rising up, stepping up, saying, okay, it's going to be my hand at the wheel, and I'll be willing to take that on for a few years, but we need to get these people in office. So I encourage you to do that. Unfortunately, there's elections every single year in Bloomington. We don't get a break, so we're right back at it again. But it's an opportunity as well, and I want us to see it as that. So once again, thank you so much for taking time. Thank these representatives, if you would, with a round of applause. Thank you very much. Again, in all fairness, these folks have graciously come. They've given time from their families, from their representatives. In fact, Nadeau, his name's not up here, but Representative Nadeau, he's actually doing a town hall in his district, and that's why he's going to be here. Okay? So Myers as well. So these folks have given up their time to talk to us because our representatives won't show up and talk to us. That's the reality. That's the elephant in this room right here. So anyway, they're going to finish up with some final comments. Take 5 minutes, just wrap things up here, and then we'll wrap up the meeting, and then feel free to linger afterwards if you can. Thank you so much for coming, folks.
Thank you again, David, and thank you everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. And this is how, and I've said this many times, this is messy. We're in a crisis situation, and I feel like this is where we needed to get in order to motivate people to get out of the situation that we're in. We have to take back our government. The people are the ones that need to get active. We've maybe been a little complacent, not paying attention, and now it's time for us to get active again. So for you up in the front row, or you were on the top row, you were saying, we need to get more people involved. Well, I want to give you an encouraging story. So this 40B race in Roseville, which I don't know the spread, but the Democrat, the one that cheated, won. Do you remember the spread on that?
It was about 7,000 votes.
Okay, 7,000 votes. This is a district where Paul Wickstrom is the Republican candidate, and 3 people spent countless hours investigating that this other gentleman did not live in the district. So when you say we don't have the power, well, this is a blue district, and it took a few people that were very committed and said, this is not right. This is the line in the sand. I am not going to allow this in my district, and who activated and spent a lot of time. Those 3 people are why we're in this situation right now, because they turned around that race and that man was not seated. So there is a lot of power. Now moving forward in 40B, and I understand in a lot of the suburban districts, people feel like your voice is not being heard, you're not being represented. Well, know that we hear you and we see you. In the Republican Party, we need to do a better job to reach out to these suburban areas. Moving forward in this 40B district, we have a great candidate in Paul Wickstrom. We have a plan. He's surrounded by people helping him. He's fundraising. And it would be one of the greatest, Minnesota miracles if we could flip that seat and put the Republicans in the majority. And so I just want to encourage everyone, even though sometimes we're in these blue areas and we think, well, what can I do? And my vote doesn't count. Well, every time you say that, you're suppressing another Republican's vote.
We don't show up though.
Right.
I'm one of them.
No, but even by saying that, we can't win that district, this is a blue area, we can't win. We're projecting as a party that these seats are not within our reach. And we have to switch that around. We have to switch that mentality around, that we have to become active in these areas and be a presence so that we can really represent you.
Thank you for being here. Bloomington is not lost. Roseville is not lost. Minnesota is not lost. The people are with us. When I door knocked all over my district. When you just talk to a voter and you have no idea what their affiliation is, people want the same things. They want good schools, they want safe communities, they want to be able to afford their lives, and they want their money not to be wasted. People want the same things. So we just need to tell them we're the party that will deliver that. And they will vote for us. I get crossover votes all the time. That's the only way I win my district, right? So I'm encouraging you. These city council races, if you're interested in school board, there's a fantastic group called Minnesota Parents Alliance. They do school board training for candidates, and they're amazing. They would love to work with you if you want to run for school board. Check them out. But also, here in Bloomington, like if each of you, like it's a math issue, right? It's about we need more voters. So if each of you commit to getting 10 friends to vote, you can create your own little text tree. This is how I won my first race. I had 10 women friends. We created a text tree. They each texted 10 friends and made them promise to go to the polls, and it just grew and grew and grew. Like, it's simple things like that, because it's math. We just need to get more people to show up. So if you have time in this Roseville race, this is a good place to put your energy for the next 6 weeks, right? If you have friends in Roseville, make sure they're voting. Call them. If you can donate to Paul Wickstrom, please do. If you can have time to door knock or show up for a lit drop, MNGOP has a website, the Freedom Club has a website, they are recruiting people, training people. I mean, it's easy. 4 hours to go door knock a bunch of apartment buildings, it goes so fast and it's fun, right? So find ways to plug in. We all can't do everything, but if everyone does a little bit, we can change this state. People are with us. They agree with us. Thank you.
Thanks again. Let's give them a round of applause. So again, the easiest way the easiest way to solve this impasse is to get Wickstrom in there. It's wickstromforhouse.com, and that's W-I-K, not C-K, just W-I-K-S-T-R-O-M, Wickstrom for House. The only thing we can't do for Paul is vote for him. We can donate, we can volunteer, we can call our friends, we can door knock, we can do everything that anybody else can do. The only thing we can't do is vote. So I encourage you, if you really want to help to break this impasse, nothing would send shockwaves probably through the whole country. For Roseville to elect Paul Wickstrom, I mean, that would send shockwaves. That would be just like a bellwether type of a thing and show people like, whoa, what's going on in Minnesota? So let's make it happen. Let's make it happen, okay? Well, thanks again, everybody. Linger afterwards if you want. Otherwise, have a great day.